Hey again, this is take three of the Controlled Ramble series. And this one, I want to talk about perception and internal modeling. And so basically, the idea here is that what you perceive, like it's like a video image of the reality as we know it. And it consists of things we touch, the way they feel, our perception of distance between our hand and the thing we're reaching to grab, colors, sounds, smells, anything associated with the systems, with the senses. So what those senses do is they perceive something, supposedly, and then they sort of transmute that something into bioelectrical and biochemical signals that propagate through the nervous system and end up in the brain, which is also the seat of the nervous system, even though a lot of people say, well, the whole nervous system is really an extension of the brain in the first place. But that's just a matter of modeling. What model are you using? And then remaining internally coherent with that model. So let's hone in on something like color. So I'm looking at a red stop sign right now. And the red coming from that stop sign is not red until my brain models it as red. Before my brain models it as red, it is bioelectrical and biochemical signals propagating from my eye down my optic nerve and then into the brain where it's bounced around with my memories of the color red, which equate to basically consistently fired neural pathways. And then associated pathways, if you are foraging in the forest and you see a red berry, likely you won't eat it because it's associated with the idea that red berries cause death a lot or sickness a lot. And you might not even be consciously thinking that in words, but that's the pathways firing. Um, the color itself doesn't exist outside of the human body. It's only a color once a organic brain with a nervous system models it. So what I'm trying to get at here is that there's nothing red about that stop sign. Not intrinsically, not ontologically, not outside of the subjective human-like conscious experience. I'm using these words very carefully, and I'll explain why in further videos probably later today. So everything that my brain has put together in what appears to be a very coherent, almost like fully immersive video or video game-like environment is a mental model. All of these signals then put together by the internal recursive self-modeler of the information itself, which comes in the form of the bioelectrical and biochemical signals. And this is true for everything. This is true for the photon. The photon does not exist as such outside of human perception. Not in the same way. Not in the way it appears to us from where we sit and how we look at it. The red photon exists inside the mental model, as does the emission process, where the electron, which also exists inside this mental model, collapses from a what's called a orbital shell or a valence orbital shell or a valent orbital. Anyways, the physicists will know a lot more about that than me. I just know enough to talk about it. As we should all, actually. They should teach this to us in elementary school, but they don't, and I don't know why. Can't figure that out. But at any rate, the electron collapses from a state of superposition in its excited state down an orbital layer, an orbital, and it emits a photon. It just squirts it out. Like the electron goes, whee, and then the atom goes squirt, and what it squirts out is the photon. And all of that happens within this mental model inside of a human brain trying to make sense of it all in a way that is internally coherent with the rest of the model. And so then that photon travels through what we call space and time. In another aspect of the model we call space-time, which also exists inside our mental model. not as an ontological truth outside of us in a way that is verifiable and provable. Otherwise, they would have done it by now. And so then that red photon hits my eyeball. Well, specifically, it hits a rod or a cone in the retina of my eyeball. All of those things exist as such inside the same internally coherent, recursive self-model created by the human brain and the collective of human brains that all agree that, yes, this is close enough to reality to call reality. And for functional purposes, it's great. But as ontological truths with a capital T and a capital O, which we would then fold our hands in prayer to and do obeisance to, like we do currently as a society, and then we give them all our money and work our entire lives away to do it. And that's where I want to ramble, so I'm going to reel it back in. So anyways, all of that occurs inside this model, inside of the human brain, which is also in this model as such. And that's the whole point. Every single thing that we look at, experience, interface with, and describe, and put into words, and then describe together, and then agree to believe as truth with a capital T, all exists within the mental model. And so that's pretty much it. Pretty cool stuff. Honestly, I'm very fascinated by this, and a lot of people are very terrified by this because they're like, oh, well, you're just saying that nothing exists and we can't possibly know. I'm saying, well, we can't possibly know that anything exists. This is true. Is it terrible? No. It just means that that particular paradigm is really fascinating. There's other paradigms too, that are really amazing and actually quite fulfilling. I like the Buddhism one. That one's really fascinating and amazing. But all of the religious paradigms, even atheism, they all exist as potential internal models, and you can actually switch between them or mix them together or understand how none of them are mutually exclusive as long as you understand them all to be functional models, or what I like to call functional mythologies, functional metaphors. They are tools. They are interfaces. And when you stack them or switch between them, like a driver of a car changing lanes or adjusting for different terrain for different purposes, you find that you can actually grow and evolve together consciously on purpose in directions that make a hell of a lot more sense than just spending more money while you work harder and longer hours for less pay. Even if it's the same pay you were making 5 years ago, it is still less pay. Why? Because it costs a lot more money now than it did 5 years ago. Like, your money's worth like a fifth less than it was that long ago. And we're on this track because that's just the natural way of things. Nobody's driving the boat. Well, that's not true. Lots of people are driving the boat. It's just they're very wealthy people with very elite statuses, and they have a lot of power, especially over what we're allowed to talk about and how we're allowed to talk about it. That's why I suggest that all of us laymen, such as myself, uneducated swill of population, simply participate in the conscious evolution of humankind as a whole. It's not really that difficult of a concept, and I think that we would be a lot better off if we participated rather than just be told what reality is by a bunch of corporations who are basically wedded eternally, soul to soul, with the politicians. And I don't mean the ones you vote for. Cheers. I love you. Have a great day. Please let me know if any of this is interesting. All right, take care.